Hi, everyone. Give me one moment. Let me just get myself situated over here. Um, let's start our presentation. It's just loading. For this assignment, we were supposed to make an for applied assignment two. We were supposed to either pick to do interviews, program review, curriculum, and a bunch of other lists. I chose to do for this assignment program review. My initial idea was to do an observation, but since I had to change centers, I just automatically changed my for a program review just because I wasn't sure of how many um, dual language learners they would have in that school. So I picked program review. For my pre-work for my program review, I put a little bit of the questions just to kind of guide me here. What programs do I plan to review is the program where I'm working at, Primrose School of Simpsonville Five Forks. I gained access to this program due to the fact that I work there. I currently work at this location as a preschool teacher. And what do you know about the early childhood education center program? How long has it been open, running? Has the population, students, community service, blah, blah, blah. Whoops, sorry. Let's go back over here. Pre-work. There we go. This school has been open for about 10 years, the location where I'm at. But this school was created in, I believe, in 82 in Georgia. And it does have several dual language students per classroom, but it truly only focus on teaching English and Spanish. And it definitely serves to a higher class of students in the community around. So it's definitely not focused on low income or, with I guess federal programs or even state programs. They're not associated with any of those. And what topics and areas do you pay close attention as you review this program? When I started there, I noticed that there was a lot of the tips and ideas suggested in our class in the classroom, even though I put over here, I plan on focus on how the school prepares students and educators to have dual language learning students in their classroom. I also want to pay attention to bulletin boards and see any cultural aspects are included. But I also wanted to see a little bit of, have more of a conversation with teachers and seeing if like there's any training being done for that, or is there any type of um I guess track record to know how many students are, bilingual or things like that. I guess it was more of a general overview, but I tried focusing more on the dual language I guess aspect of it. For evidence, I'm sorry. This is the school where I work at. This is the picture from the outside. I did take a couple general pictures just so you guys can kind of have an idea. And the school is a very long hallway. The classrooms are on the sides. One thing I did notice, and the pictures might be a little hard to see, one thing I did take was from the inside the classroom, is that all the bulletin boards inside and outside the classrooms were in English. There was very little. The only thing that I found in an entire classroom that had any type of other languages in it, it was only the signs per all in all the centers. So everything else, talking about the curriculum or talking about the schedule of the classroom or talking, signs of illnesses and things like that, that's going to the bulletin board that, that can share a lot of important information is only done in English. Same thing in the classroom. This is the classroom where I'm currently teaching, and like I said, I've been fairly new. It's been over there for maybe about a month or so, and so I still haven't been able to change anything. So I just use that as an example. That as you can see over here, very little is being I guess brought up from different cultures and just very little. All the examples shown or presented to the children are mainly in English. These pictures over here that I'm showing you right now is just, again, as I mentioned before, I'm going to be, looking at bulletin boards and hallways and just how every student's culture is brought to the school. And like I said, this is just kind of showing you guys that a lot of the stuff it's really focused on the English side and not much on the dual language bilingual side of it. Now going for our applied assignment program review, I'm going to be looking down a little bit just because I have my paperwork over here next to me. Just so I found it to be a little bit easier for me to print this and just kind of take the notes that I needed it by hand. So I took the pictures. My printer stopped working, so I couldn't really scan them, but I did my best with the pictures, and hopefully with me reading them, it will be a little bit better for you guys to understand. Uh, but describing the program that under review, like I said before, is Primrose School of Simpsonville, Five Forks, Simpsonville. The location, again, the size, there is about 192 to close to 200 students just because it's a never ending rotation. There are 45 staff members, but we do have a lot of support staff, and we do have, I would say, probably 4 to 5 different managers. So, I would say about 35 are truly teachers and educators in the classroom. And I did ask for our program coordinator or assistant directors and all that if they were aware specifically of the number of, um, I guess, bilingual students or dual language learners, and they were not aware of that. They basically told me that this is not something that they really even keep track of. This is over here, the summary sheet. As we can see, my school definitely did not do very good on that. And I definitely think that it could have been better. Only 3% of, the points for communication. The total was 45. We only got, 15 points, which is only 3% of what, of the 100%. Same thing with human resources. It was a very low overall scoring, which I even ask my coworkers that have been there for longer to kind of review my, I guess, assessment, just to make sure I wasn't being too critical. And I wasn't. So I was not. And she had been there for about 3 years, so she could give me a little bit more of a pointing direction for those things. So for the communication aspect, identify each family preferred language and things like that, and use information for planning and providing services. Again, they were not very responsive on that. I did, and this is when I say that I did a lot of, I guess, interviewing with also my coworkers, because this is a very new place for me, and I'm still, I guess, navigating how those work and curriculum and all that stuff. So use guidelines for national interpretation and translation associations to ensure high quality service. They don't really do that. I do know that they have some staff members that do speak other languages, and those are the only resources that the extra resources that they use for that. Provide language assistance at meetings, trainings, and programs, events, and families, preferred families. That's definitely something that's not accommodated over there. Provide language assistance in families' preferred language during teacher family conferences. They try to, if possible. Like I said, because we do have a lot of teachers in that school that speak other languages, they can't try to accommodate, but that's not something that they will specifically do to each individual family that may need. So that's why the score was so low. Provide policies and procedures to address issues such as social media management and confidentiality. That's one aspect that they take it very, very serious in there. They give you a form before you enroll your child in there, and you can sign any type of sharing, pictures and things like that. And so they're very concerned about that. Have guidelines for staff communication with families, including how program defines consider and respectful communication. We do have a system to where we're not allowed to send any messages unless it's approved by the management team. So one of them have to do that, just, I guess, to maintain, and just so also they're aware of all the communication that's going on. So nothing really slips through the crack or there is a miscommunication in any way. So they're pretty good about that. It's inform community stakeholders about our services. We don't really have any of that. Doesn't really apply for us. And ensure that our program transportation services provide bilingual. They also just got rid of the transportation part of the program, so they don't really offer that. So that doesn't really apply for that program exactly. For the human resources part, and the training and professional development, which is the pages that we're going to be discussing now. Again, they did not do very well. Use interview questions to ensure job applicants or volunteers are culturally linguistic responsive to our children, families, and other staff. When I started there, they definitely, you can definitely see that they definitely want to bring more of a diverse staff member, but that's not, even though there, like I said, there is a variety of different cultures, there's people from everywhere working in the school. I don't think this they focus, even though I put that, yes, they know they're in a higher number, they definitely don't make that of a goal for the school. Assess the language competencies of the job applicants to ensure they're effective communicators with our children who are dual communication. Because of our job is mostly communication, they're also very big into how we communicate, how we talk to the children. And even if we have to use, they're very open to, if we have to use any type of like translation devices or anything like that, they're okay with that, and they actually encourage us to do that just for us to be able to create that connection to their students. Include questions in our staff evaluations that assess cultural. They do very lightly. I actually did a couple assessments with my students, and very little was asked about other languages. It was more about how the kids are speaking and all that part, but nothing much about students who are learning the language. Identify strengths area and improvement related to cultural individual staff evaluation. They also don't really do much. They do if there is a concern brought up, but that's not something that evaluation is done um, often. It's not like this is something that's always being done. Again, include specific responsibility and job description of your education staff and home visitors for working with children. They do not do any of that stuff. They ensure coaches are knowledgeable about cultural linguistic diversities. They also don't really focus on that. Assist staff in getting transcript of their coursework work taken in other countries, analyze. They don't really do any of this stuff about children who are anything that's in regards to children with dual language. They've scored very, very low because they are not focused on that. They also don't do anything about transcript or anything like that. Nothing about data collection on languages spoken by the staff or the support or anything like that. Policies to play in place to promote retention. They don't really focus on that. So the score for this section is 17. And the training and professional development, again, it's very, very low, just because a lot of this stuff is focused on the dual language side of this. Like providing a research-based training in regards to first and second language. That's never been brought up in any moment that I have been in there. I had definitely asked about it, but that's not something that was brought up in any way to the classroom or to me in any way. Include introduction of multicultural principles for early childhood leaders. They don't do any of that. Focus on different cultural practices, belief. They also don't do any of that. Provide opportunities. And this is the part to where I was really sat down and I really asked my coworker if I was being very too critical of the place, and that's where she was like, no, I've been here for 3 years and you were right. We've never been offered any type of assistance or any type of I guess further development, like professional development, for honestly any aspect. So uh, for this section, like I said, they did very, very low number. They only got a 7. For teaching and learning, let's see, sorry. For teaching in the learning environment, integrate and assess data on children who are dual language learning, individual and group planning. Not really. They don't really do that. Recognize that children who are dual language are individuals and represent diverse culture and linguistic background. They definitely respect all of the choices and decisions due to that culture, part of that culture. So for example, we have a child that due to religion reasons, he's not allowed to eat beef or have anything with milk or anything like that. So they're very big about respecting those aspects. But ensure learning experience such as music, math, and science reflect on cultures. That's really not. It's really based off of the American culture. Uh, they're very big on using age appropriate approaches to build adult child relationship and child child relationships. They're very big into that, and they do offer a lot of resources for that. They have a lot of support staff and support material for that. So that's something that's very good about that. Um, reading to our children in English daily, and yes, we do. We actually do a bag to where children students bring it home. They have to find a letter from our alphabet in that in at their house, and then they bring it to school and we'll share with the students. Um, and a lot of the stuff over here too, I saw that it really depends on the teacher's initiative to create those things. It's not part of the program. It's more a lot about the initiative for the teachers. So, and this is one thing to maybe is good or bad. I think it's a negative thing that the school leaves a lot of those decisions up to the teachers. Incorporate keywords and phrases in home language. We did have a couple of students who, oh, if the student can, it might say this or might say that, it means this, so they do have a little bit of those things where, couple notes here and there. It's not a very intensive or very descriptive thing. Promote children's positive self concept by using the correct pronunciation of our children's name. That's something that they really do. Is that they in that even in their training they do tell like, hey, make of a point to really know how to pronounce your students' names, even if it's a different name, just so those kids, you can have a nickname to make it easier, but also making the point to really say the name right, just so the kids are like, hey, you really do know my name, you're calling me by my nickname, but the student know that they're we do know how to pronounce their name and things like that, so they make of a point to even put it in their training section of that. They don't really promote pairing your English speaking culture with home language. They don't really do much of that. Code switching is a natural thing. It's something that's, it happens even for us as teachers and myself, so they don't see that something as a negative, and it's something that's, we even encourage. That's something that our friends can learn something new, and that's something that's really encouraged in the school. um, Plan to use dialogic reading and oral language strategies in order to promote English language development, because a lot of the students that are in the school, they are very, they're already pretty proficient in English and they are very fluent in English. They don't really do much of that. And use a range of verbal and nonverbal methods to promote adult and child interactions. Uh, like I said, we do a lot of those activities that can be put for dual language learners, but those aspects are not focused solely on dual language learners. This is something that we use more in a general setting. So I put 4 because it's not only for dual language learners, but it's something that's done for all students, not just bilingual students. For reflect and understanding of the stages of the first second language, for a majority of this was pretty low numbers. The only one that that we scored a little bit higher on this page was displaying photographs of children who are dual language learner and their families that teachers refer as part of planned teaching strategies. We do have, lessons. We do have family pictures and things like that that we can be like, hey, for a holiday or for Easter, or if there's a child that has a different comes from a different culture and maybe celebrates that same holiday but in a different way, that's something that can definitely be pulled like that. So for this section, they scored was the highest scoring, which is also not great, but it was a 48. And then moving on to curriculum did very, very, very bad. Oh, sorry, I did curriculum and child screening assessments. I'm going to talk about the curriculum first. Curriculum did very, very low, scored very, very low. It's basically created for Americans and students who speak English. One part that we did score a little bit higher was support our education managers, coaches, and child development specialists to monitor curriculum implementation and fidelity. We do have a curriculum coordinator, and that solely her job is to really kind of make sure we're following it, and we're following it to an extent. They're not very strict on only following the curriculum. They do give the teachers a lot of space to kind of branch out, but they do try to stick to it just so kids have more of a consistency and things like that. So for this section they did score only 8. For child screening and assessments, again, it was probably, like I said, all of them have been really, really low. So assessment information for each child to individualize learning experiences, improving teaching practices and home visits. I'm not really, I put 3 just based on more of the conversation I had with my coworkers, because we were doing assessments and things like that, even though we can talk about with parents about strategies. It's not really something that we are, we can use those assessments, but that's not something that, it's really focused on. And like I said, all the assessments and all that stuff, it's mainly focused on students that speak English. Use ongoing observation of children's behavior in the classroom, home. This is something that we do all the time. This is one of the schools that I've seen that has the best at doing that, at doing the observation and really documenting and just making sure that they're really on top of it, because they're serving a higher class of families, of communities. So I guess they're just more aware and more interested in those in certain behaviors. Gather and use families' insight and observation on their child's behalf behavior at home. This is something that it's like an ongoing thing every classroom, and it's definitely something that's part of the training as well for us to really, I guess, bring families into and like, hey, let's brainstorm together on what the things that we have to do. Uh, then again, share screening assessment with families in their preferred language. No, that's not even an option. I even look in their page for the assessment, and there's not even an option for that. Like I said, we can use our staff members that, if this child this the student is scoring really low in English, and we know there's a staff member that can perform that assessment in their first language, that's what we do. But we don't necessarily do um anything like, we don't have a way of like fully communicate with the families or fully do the assessment in another language. And then obtain parental consent for referrals. We also don't do that. Partner with families to access and deliver services. They also don't really do that. Develop our staff capacity and capacity of others. They don't really do that. Like I said, we just use the educators that we have available that do speak other languages. Have a process to place so that screening and assessment data in our children who are, it's not misinterpreted. They don't really have process in place for that. Develop our staff capacity to use screening and assessment instruments. Again, I was just told, hey, this is the assessment we follow. Just follow the prompts, and that's really all that was discussed about it. So for this section, they scored 18. And then finally, I do believe this is the last one. Finally, for our family and communication engagement, a lot of the stuff is also, doesn't apply, and it was also a very low scoring. Recognize the parents and children primary teachers and nurturers. They do that, integrate cultural linguistic responsive strategies with partnering with our families. It's definitely, like I said, we definitely have that very open communication with families just in case we have some type of issues or what can be working from home. Maybe if you guys use a certain word, and even I do that with my daughter's teacher to be like, hey, if she's not listening, you can say this and she's gonna respond better to certain things. But that's not something that it's really part of the program itself. It's more, from what I've seen, it's more of the initiative of teachers. Um, engage in a family partnership, agreement process and goal setting. It's really not, doesn't apply for them. They don't really have anything like that. Share strategies and activities. They don't really have anything that promotes home language. They don't really do long-term commitment to supporting their home language development. They do observe and ask children to learning is experienced at home and in the community to identify strength. They do a little bit, but not much. Ensure that families are fully informed. Um, Again, anything that's related to dual language learner, it was a very low scoring for this for the program. Well, I do want to mention that some of the resources that I did want to bring for this, and I did mention to even some of my coworkers and even the coordinator, I was like, hey, I noticed this and this and that, and even with the director and the people, who are managing, they do have a lot of the myths, that's which is one of the topics that I brought for this assignment. I thought this was so important because it brought so many topics. Like they still think that a child who's learns two languages, they're slower to learn, or they're going to be talking slower, or they're going to get confused, or oh, that's going to make them learn how to read slower. So they still have that little bit of a backwards mentality. um, Language from home, again, this is something that I didn't really see being used much. So I thought that would be really useful, to incorporate a little bit more, especially, in my classroom. I believe there is at least 2 to 3 students that do speak another language. So, and those are aspects that are not being brought from, and those are things that we did see here in the classroom are so important, you know. I guess as changing the misconception of all the myths that we heard about, children not learn talking slower or being behind in school because of that, or being confused in how to write, or there's so many other myths. And then same thing with bringing language from home. It's very little of that is being used. And then the last um resource I wanted to bring up about this topic was also creating environments, like we said in the pictures that we showed. And I can even go back over here for the slide. It is a lot of the pictures, a lot of the environment is very much geared towards only students that speak English. They do have one teacher that does 30 minutes every, she's supposed to be doing 30 minutes every day of Spanish per classroom, but that's the only other time that the children are involved or really um, I guess, really around other language. For the rest of the time, it's only English, 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 and very little discussed about, oh, let's talk about this language, or how do you say this, or how do you say that? They don't really have much of that. So those are my this is my project. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have any questions or concern, just write it down, and I'll be more than happy to answer. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.